Hello, and welcome to Swell Season Surf Radio. I'm your host, Karen Song, recording from the Newsstand studio at Rockefeller Center, right across the street from what will be the lighting of the winter holiday tree in the greatest city in the world. I am still tickled by the fact that I'm recording a surf podcast in the center of this concrete jungle, and reversely also love the awareness that despite these buildings that I'm amidst, that nature is always within reach. In fact, the subway right away, right? So despite the bustle and tunnel vision that city life can embody, we have the ocean right there. For this episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing co-founders Warren Samson and Aydon Gabourel of our very beloved Laru Beya Collective in Rockaway. Laru Beya is a nonprofit empowering the underrepresented youth of Rockaway Beach through surfing and providing access to the great outdoors. I have come to know them through their joyful and earnest presence at Rockaway, both in the surf lineup and on land. Their stoke is nothing short of infectious, and by earnest, I refer to them as surfers as well as conscientious citizens, building community and community leaders. They consist of the collective of young surfers from the community, volunteers and mentors, and co-founders Aydon and Warren, equal across the board in dedication and enthusiasm. And for me, as a person of color, and sometimes the only person of color or woman in the surf, the diversity they represent warms me. As a New Yorker, they make me truly feel at home and fill me with hope for the future of surfing. And we are so lucky to have Laru Beya as part of our New York surf community. And I'm certain that they will enrich surf culture in ways that will resonate beyond New York and for generations to come. Laru Beya, So, without further ado, the duo that planted the seed. Hello, Warren and Aydon.
Well, thank you for having us.
I wanted to start with the name. Where does the name Laru Beya come from?
So, Laru Beya, Warren and I are both, are cousins, and we hail from Belize. Specifically, our people are the Garifuna people from Belize, an Afro-Indigenous people. We have our own culture, our own language, which is the Garifuna language. And in Garifuna, Laru Beya means beach's edge or near the beach. Mm. And when we were looking for a name for the collective, for the surf collective, we kind of asked around. I asked my mom, and she was the one that actually came up with it, because it's indicative of, we've always been near the water, near the beach, both in Belize and here in Rockaway.
Beautiful. And you are Rockaway natives, both of you, yes?
Yes. Well, I was born here at St. John's Hospital here in Rockaway, and then and I would always go back and forth to Belize. So I was pretty much raised down there in Belize as a child. Aydon came here later on, and he's been here since.
I came here in 81 at 9 years old.
Wow.
I turned 49 a few weeks ago, and so yeah.
Happy birthday.
20 years. Thank you. So yeah, I guess I'm a Rockaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like? Even in the time that I've been in Rockaway surfing, it has changed so radically. You've been here since the 80s. Would you have been able to imagine what it's become? What was it like back in the 80s, and your relationship to the beach as well?
There really wasn't that much of a relationship. I'll be very honest with you. The surf scene, which I wasn't involved with until quite recently, I'll begin by saying that, and I don't surf myself. My daughter showed interest, and that was how this all came about. But growing up in the 80s in the Rockaways, we did spend a lot of time on the beach, obviously. I lived about a couple of 100 yards away from the water, so it would have been impossible not to spend a lot of time on there. But the conditions weren't always the safest. We didn't have, access to programs that would allow us to really enjoy the water we wanted to. We did see people surfing back then, and every once in a while we'd find maybe a broken board or something, just bodyboarding and everything else. But nobody, I mean, nobody until quite recently looked anything like us in surfing. It wasn't even a thought. I remember way back when some of the first shops opened up in Long Beach, and, we rode our bike out there and just out of curiosity, tried to find out what it would cost to get one of those boards. And that was just like, yeah, let's forget about that. Let's get the baseball and something else. It was just too expensive. You can get a mitt and make homemade bases or something, but, to have the kind of access, just the training, just to get in the water was just like way, way off for me.
And coming from Belize with all the coastline there, what was your relationship to the ocean itself? I mean, was it a hospitable kind of environment for you? Did it feel like, oh yeah, I can just go in and out? Or did it feel scary, especially as someone in the city, in Rockaway, like during hurricane season, seeing what would happen to the beaches? Did it feel a little daunting to even get into the water, or did it feel like a natural environment for you?
Our culture's embodied like by the water. So we're all from the water, So everything we eat, so like our culture is just so influenced by the water and the ocean. And it's a huge part of our lives. Even our diet, all this stuff. I mean, it's only here in the States that we don't like eat as much seafood as we normally would back home. But coming here to Rockaway, it definitely felt like home. We were by the water, but at the same time, there was something that was keeping us away from it, which was really weird to us, especially for me growing up. To like be living in Belize for the majority of my time and then come here just for school, and then to go to the beach here and feel like I don't belong. It was just completely taboo to me. It was crazy to feel like I can't go in the water or I don't belong. Whether it's the lifeguards just always looking out for kids of color who, you can't swim. We know you can't swim.
Wow.
But at the same time, we don't have the resources. So nobody was there to teach you how to swim. Nobody was there. They just discouraged you from going out there. And there were multiple kids who wanted to explore the water and who would drown every year and still do drown every year. So those are the things that we experienced growing up here in Rockaway. So having that relationship with the water through our own culture, and then coming here and being here in the U.S. in our own home here in Rockaway Beach, and then feeling like we don't belong. It was just a really crazy dynamic. It wasn't until later in our adulthood, and for Aydon, my younger cousins, for his daughter, he was able to get her involved, and she has no fear. So she's out there. We have her back. She does her thing, and all her friends and, all the kids that we encourage and mentor don't have that problem that we had. And that's what we want to encourage. And we really want them to feel empowered here in the water, here in Rockaway Beach, because this is where they're from. They are from a beach community, and there are little Groms that are going to grow up here. So a lot of the times for them, they see people who don't represent them here in the water. There's so many people who come from all over to surf our beach, and these kids watch them and have no access to that. So they can't afford swim lessons. They can't afford surf lessons. They can't afford boards or wetsuits. Like surfing here in Rockaway is really expensive, especially now.
Right, in the cold weather.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're like going into booties and gloves and like 5-4 wetsuits. So currently we're raising funds for the girls who are a little more advanced. We have to raise funds for them to get personal instruction, which is way more than I can give them at this point. So we have to get someone who can get them to that next level, as well as getting them the gear they need to do that effectively. So those are the reasons why we do this, and also our relationship with the water from Belize to Rockaway.
One of the things that we see Rockaway now, the gift of it is that it's so uniquely diverse compared to many lineups in the world. And it's such a beautiful experience because of that. But I think we also might take that for granted, not knowing the history. I have a friend, he's African-American, maybe a few years older than I am. He's a surfer and will not go to Rockaway to surf, even to this day, because he's so scarred by some racist incidents that were targeted towards him when he was young. And so, Aydon, since you were here in the 80s, is that something that sounds familiar? I mean, I remember growing up with like the Howard Beach thing that's on the way to Rockaway. Like
I said, I'm 49 this year. I lived that. I knew that. If we start telling stories about some of the things that my personal experience right here on this peninsula with access to the water, and I want to say that this is completely different from where we come from. It was never, the beach was the beach, the ocean was the ocean, the sea was the sea. You had access, everybody had access. You had access to fish, to swim, use the resources. And coming here, I remember that first summer and being told or making it feel unwelcome, going to like public pools at certain times and not being allowed just by way of your skin color was just so strange. Coming up in the early 80s, we didn't cross Beach 67th Street. That was a no-no. You were told specifically that you don't go uptown. You don't swim uptown. You don't go to pool parties uptown. If you did have the friends who were brave enough to invite you to a pool party uptown, they wouldn't allow you in the water. Listen, I'm not talking about 1950s black and white, fucking 1980s full color. The Howard Beach incident in my mind. You know, I remember that. Yeah. And I can see why your friend, you know, having those experiences. I just, you know, listen, I made the mistake one time with a couple of friends riding up what we call uptown back then, getting up there and being called all kinds of names. I've traveled this country. I've traveled the deep south, and I've never been called that more than I've been called right here in New York City. I'm talking right here, my hometown, right here. It's a weird dynamic. And I mean, you know, some of it continues today. There's a lot changing now. Right. I mean, if you were to come out to B67th Street today, you wouldn't think that, you know, these things ever happened here because it's so different. But having those experiences. I mean, I have friends to this day that, first of all, it's the surfing thing. I coached football in the Rockaways for years and years, and that's more what I'm known for than surfing. And they see what I'm doing on my page, and they're just like, oh, and these are full-grown men with children, and some of them grandchildren still, because of things that they experience, don't have a relationship with the water and ocean. That in itself can be dangerous because of the negative things that they experience as children. It's passed on. And so it's like, stay away from that. Don't go here, and it's dangerous. But then your child ends up somewhere at a pool party and there's a huge crowd and nobody's paying attention and they can't swim. And then what? There's so much to play into this. This is very indicative, not just of Rockaway, but all over the United States. There's a long history of being denied access, you know, to water in the oceans, and they're having an effect on, you know, multiple generations. Right. And my hope is that through what we're doing here in Rockaway, that changes the whole narrative, not only here, but all over. That the children coming up now do recognize that, hey, you know, I have just as much right to be here. I can swim there. So, it was some tough years that we avoided these certain areas altogether. We stayed basically down in the 20s and the 30s and maybe the 40s, but anything beyond 67th Street, we're like, nah, you just don't go up there. Right. You just don't. The least you'd be glared at the most you'd be called all kinds of names and chased out of there.
Yeah. Now, I know your presence has been persistent over the last few years, and it's always such a joy to come to the beach and see you and see the kids and the mentors. You have such a wonderful program of mentors and volunteers. Shout out to Kat and Aydon and Natalie and Tarumi, and just there's so many. It feels like a family. It's not like you have volunteers that come in and out. You see the same faces, the same youth. There's a real, like I said, earnestness to the pursuit of surfing and also community building. And it seems like surfing's just one part of what you guys do. It's like you're building really great citizens. There's awareness of people connected to nature, to their environment, to community. I see future kind of leadership building and just this family vibe. It's really beautiful. And, you know, I just think about like kids these days. What kid is waking up at like 5 a.m. in the middle of summer, right? They're staying up late, watching TV, playing video games on the computer, whatever. And your kids are out and just so stoked to be out in the water, and they're out there all day. And I mean, that just must be so joyful for you as a father. And I know your daughter, Aydon, is one of the girls in the collective, but also what a joy it must be to see this energy unfold and how infectious it is also to the broader Rockaway and surf community. How many youth do you have, and how do they find you, you know, and how does the program, like, is there any structure in terms of how kids can come to you? And, you know, if someone wants to be a part of Laru Beya, like, what's the first step as a kid?
So Laru Beya is ever evolving. Initially, we started out with a small group of girls. Me specifically, I was looking for someone. My daughter has always loved the water. She showed some interest in surfing just by coming out here and, you know, looking out here. And so I brought her out, and I decided that I would take her out and try and get her some lessons. And then I saw what the lessons cost, and I knew it would